a giant, hairy creature, part ape, part man. Indians call him Sasquatch. They believe he is as gentle as he is powerful and mysterious. He's been seen many times in the rugged mountains and deep woods of the Pacific Northwest. The encounters have not always been peaceful. In 1924, a small group of men were working a mine in a canyon near Mount St. Helens in Washington. One night, the miners took their weapons inside and bolted the door. They thought they were secure for the evening. Outside, something strange was happening. The cabin was under attack. Boulders rained on the roof, and someone, or something, was trying to break in. The miners later described their attackers as large, hairy apes. The siege lasted several hours. Miners escaped injury that night. The area now known as Ape Canyon is one of the many places in the Northwest where man continues his hunt for this elusive creature we call Bigfoot. Many people do not believe in Bigfoot, but a lot of people do, and some of them feel they must kill it to prove it exists.
This series presents information based in part on theory and conjecture. The producer's purpose is to suggest some possible explanations, but not necessarily the only ones, to the mysteries we will examine.
To the Indians living along the Columbia River in Oregon and Washington, or those in Canada, there is no need for proof of Bigfoot. Sasquatch has been a part of Indian lore as long as they've inhabited this land. Some anthropologists believe that the creature could have come to the northwestern part of the United States along with the Indians, across a land bridge that once connected Siberia to Alaska. The newcomers to this country have seen Bigfoot in an area ranging from northern California to southwest British Columbia. To the Indian, Bigfoot carries a mystical significance. Sometimes it's difficult to tell where myth ends and reality begins. In our modern world of concrete and steel, we're far removed from the Indian lore of Bigfoot. It's hard to imagine any corner of our crowded world where a giant, man-like creature could roam free. Yet there's persuasive evidence that Bigfoot is real, and that urban man may be close to his first meeting with this living legend. It is felt by some scientists that Bigfoot falls somewhere in this progressive chart of man, a giant hominid related to but not like modern man. According to this theory, Bigfoot would have pursued a course of evolution separate but parallel to his human cousins. Dr. Grover Krantz is an anthropologist at Washington State University.
Its locomotion is the human design, so we know it's probably our closest living relative. But in terms of anything mental characteristics, no, it's not human. So it is a mixture of ape and human characteristics, and if you want to call that a missing link, that's fine. Now, this is a cast of a jawbone of something that I think is actually the Sasquatch. This is a jaw that's anatomically in between human and ape in its teeth, but it's much larger than any living ape, much larger than a gorilla, for instance. These are known from fossils about 1 million years old in China, and it has been named Gigantopithecus, and it has approximately the characteristics that our Sasquatch has. So I'm inclined to think that this species just simply is continuing today.
The most convincing visual evidence of Bigfoot is a film taken by Roger Patterson in Northern California. Dr. Krantz believes it to be authentic.
I've examined the film many times, watching it forward, backwards, stop frame, measured, and everything. And all of the anatomy of the creature is perfectly consistent. It just simply does not fit with a man wearing a suit. In fact, a suit of that size, we can establish exactly how big it is. There's no way a man could fit into it. The shoulders and chest are simply too wide. The feet are properly designed for carrying that kind of body weight, and that doesn't make any sense unless you've got a body of that size. And Patterson could not have faked any of this stuff. I talked to him about some of the things I saw, and he didn't even understand what I was talking about.
Reports of Bigfoot sightings in the Northwest go all the way back to 1811. There have been some in other parts of the United States, but most have come in the area from Northern California to British Columbia. In 1882, a British Columbia newspaper published the story of railroad workers who saw and captured a creature they called Jacko. No one seems to know what happened to that creature, but the hunt for others has brought headlines all across the United States. There have been an estimated 2,000 reported sightings of Bigfoot. Half of those are considered fakes. The other half are very real, especially to those who live in this rugged country and who've seen with their very own eyes, seen something strange and sometimes frightening.
I'd been down to my folks's, and Cindy was with me, and we decided it time to go home, and so we left. And
Lewis Alway and his daughter Cindy of Stevenson, Washington, returning home one night from visiting his parents, came across something they'd never seen before.
It was about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and Cindy was sleeping on the floor, on the seat. And I come around the corner there, and there it was. It looked to me like he had just come over the top of the guardrail there. I woke her up and she got to see it just before it ran into brush. And at first I thought it was a bear, but when it took off across the road on its hind legs, I just couldn't believe it. I hunt and I fish and I see a lot of game all the time, and it looked like something that I'd never saw before.
3 or 4 years ago, we received a call in the late part of the fall. The people who own this cabin back here said they'd found some tracks of what they thought was a large animal. And we came out and investigated that. Back here by the tree, we found several tracks that were real large, way larger than a human. I sure wonder about it.
Sheriff William Klausner of Skamania County in Washington has investigated tracks and talked with eyewitnesses. He's seen too much to be totally skeptical.
The most unique thing about what we've learned from this is that the people who have either written or called, who have experienced the same kind of thing or had seen tracks, mention of a strong sulfur smell, and that's real unusual.
As Sheriff Klausner says, the smell description is not unusual. James Strahan and Harold Teskey recently saw something on the roadside near Colton, Oregon.
And there was a big, huge object on the left of the road, and I rolled the window down in the car, and this thing was approximately 3.5, 4 feet wide, about 6, 7 foot tall. And the odor of this animal, after I rolled the window down, was so offensive that I couldn't remain there any longer. And I was scared too. And I've been around the mountains and around animals a lot, and this thing truly scared me. And so I got out of there and rolled the windows up in the car, went on home. And the odor of that animal stayed in that car until the next morning. It was still in there.
1 mile outside the Dalles, Oregon, several members of the Bigfoot Investigation Project and Information Center climbed to an observation point. They're led by Peter Byrne, 50-year-old adventurer and former big game hunter in Nepal. Byrne has dropped his rifle in favor of camera and binoculars. For 5 years, he's headed the Bigfoot Investigation Project and stalked these North Woods, checking out every story and every set of tracks. His prey is elusive.
We will talk to the person who says that they've seen one, We will talk to their family, perhaps to their employers or employees. We'll talk to the local police to see if they know them, to find out if the person is simply a joker, a hoaxer of some kind, or if they're a person of reputation and of known integrity. And then we'll go and see the person, we'll interview them, and of course we'll try and get to the place of the actual sighting as quickly as possible.
One of the most credible sightings took place near Mount Hood, Oregon in 1974. Two loggers, Jack Cochran and Furman Osborne, were working in an area of fallen timber. Cochran explains what he saw.
I looked off towards the woods, and I saw these two long legs moving at the edge of the timber. And as this thing walked, it walked with a glide, and then it reached an arm out and kind of touched a tree as it walked by. And I saw these wide shoulders, and then it just moved off down the hill.
J.C. Rourke and I were up on that little hill there and was setting chokers, and the cat came down the ladder and he didn't come back, so we decided to walk out in the woods onto the timber so we could be in the shade, and we heard this commotion there in the brush, and we saw this big monster going out through there. And I yelled for my buddy. I wanted him to see him, and I started running. I wanted to get a closer look at him, and we chased him over the ridge there, and at one time I was within 50 feet of him.
Whatever Osborne chased through the woods left him far behind. Cochran, an amateur artist, tried to sketch what he saw.
He was tall, long-legged, and hairy, very broad shoulders, and his head seemed to just spring up out of his shoulders, no neck. The arms were long and more in proportion than a human.
There is persuasive evidence that men may be closing in on Bigfoot. What will the hunters do if they find him?
And we'll just smooth it out a little bit, make sure it runs into all the cracks and corners, and that's really all there is to it.
Peter Byrne, professional Bigfoot investigator.
Before doing this,
Hundreds of unexplained footprints have been found in these woods. They receive close examination by the experts.
This is a plaster cast of an actual footprint here, and it's a 13.5-inch cast, and it has a number of peculiarities. One is the normal bulge behind the big toe, or the hallux, and then there's a second bulge, and this is peculiar to all of the footprints that we have seen. Nobody really knows what causes this second bulge. Perhaps it's a muscle of some kind to support the enormous weight.
This is a cast of an individual that's very obviously crippled, and I studied this at some length and found these two bulges on the outside of the foot. Anatomically, they have to correspond to a couple of gaps in the bones on the foot themselves. And the bulges in a normal human foot expanded to this size would have been here, but they're shifted forward. Well, anatomically, this means that the ankle weight is shifted somewhat forward. It's not just a gigantic human foot. It's the leverage has been redesigned. And this happens to be redesigned just exactly the way it would have to be for a 800-pound animal. So if the idea of that this was faked by somebody isn't quite so simple. If it was faked, it was done by a human anatomist who was a real genius, and he had to have laid out thousands of these fakes all over the place, and that just simply becomes impossible.
Among the fakery that we have seen is a piece of film made in 1970 by a man in northern Washington. At first, it looked very good. It was a man in a fur suit, of course. The particular man tried to sell it to us for $25,000. And he told us that the creature in this movie was 8 foot 6 inches in height. But when we found the area, we were able to do our own measurements, and we saw that the creature in the fur suit, or the man in the fur suit, was a little under 6 feet in height. This is, I think, is a good example of the kind of fakery that we have encountered through the years.
Throughout the Northwest, there are hundreds of men hunting for Bigfoot. Don Peterson, Jack Sullivan, and James Huskin have searched for several years. They believe the hunt will end with a bullet.
Well, I think eventually somebody's going to bring one in. It's the only way. Pictures aren't going to be enough, because there's been film taken of one of these creatures anyway, and it's in dispute.
Like
Jim said if we take a bunch of pictures, they're going to be under dispute. And if you can shoot one animal, you might be able to save the rest of them from everybody else from shooting them too.
And that sets up a conflict among Bigfoot hunters. Does it have to be killed to prove it exists? Through the centuries, the mighty Columbia River separating Washington and Oregon has cut a deep gorge on its way to the Pacific Ocean. It is a big, rugged, beautiful land where man holds a deep respect for nature. In Stevenson, Washington, they passed an ordinance setting a $10,000 fine or 5 years in jail for killing a Bigfoot. The people living in this country have a special relationship to the woods. They depend on the land for their survival. They may not totally believe in Bigfoot, but they believe in the possibility. And they don't want it killed, at least not in their county. District Attorney Robert Leake.
We didn't feel that if there was such an animal, that the animal had ever harmed anybody or that it had done anything to deserve to be shot or captured.
We need a piece of the body. Nothing else will be accepted.
I think that there are many other ways of proving the existence of something other than killing that particular thing that you're trying to prove exists.
My preference would be to locate a hunter who has shot and killed one, and perhaps because he thought he killed a valuable animal or a peculiar human, he might not have said anything about it. But if he would come forward, perhaps we could examine the place where he killed it, and we might find a few bones, and then the whole thing is settled right there. If we don't find such an old kill, then the only alternative remaining is to kill one now. And grisly as that sounds, I think that is probably what we'll have to do.
I would strongly urge the doctor to reconsider that, especially if he thinks he's going to do it in this county, because we would enforce the ordinance.
Why add more controversy to something that's already controversial? Although what we have to have is a specimen for scientific identification.
I think it would be morally wrong. I see no reason. In fact, I talked to a small boy, a schoolboy recently, and he said some people say shoot one to prove that they're there. And then he said, supposing the one they shoot is the last one.
Well, my answer to that is if they become extinct, so what? If they're not proven, it doesn't make any difference. We have a lot of animals that became extinct in the past, and there's nothing we can do about it. And if this animal remains unaccepted, who cares if it becomes extinct?
They're obviously rare. There are not very many of them. And as we see them, they could be a hominid form. It could be a man. To shoot one would be totally wrong. And we are totally opposed to this philosophy.
While men ponder the dilemma, to kill or not to kill, many Indians wonder why this preoccupation with proving Bigfoot exists. To the Indian, there is no doubt. Many, like Mrs. Joe Washington, see the hunt for Bigfoot just another intrusion into their sacred past.
You'll never be able to, you might say, civilize him like the white man done to us. He's somebody that belongs in the area that he chooses to live in. And if someone did bring him down, he'd never adapt to your way or even mine, because his way of life is entirely different from ours, mine and yours. And I always felt so bad when I hear of Sasquatch hunters that say they're going to photograph this man, or most of them refer to him as an animal. And from the stories and things that I was taught by my people, that he is not an animal, he's not a savage, he's a gentle being that just goes about his own way, collecting his own food, clothing, and lives where he chooses.
Man, with his ingenuity and machinery, continues to stalk this creature. creature described by the Indians as a gentle being, wanting to live in peace in his own habitat. A creature some scientists believe is a link to centuries long past.
The gorilla is mentioned in Greek mythology going back hundreds and hundreds of years, and yet it was not discovered until the late 18th century. And the subspecies, the mountain gorilla, was not identified until early 1900. And there are other examples. The fossil fish that was discovered in the Indian Ocean only a few years ago, believed to be extinct for 80 million years. This is the coelacanth, and now it's known to still live off the coast of Africa.
Is that the case with Bigfoot? Is this creature really a relative of the Gigantopithecus, a primate that lived over 1 million years ago in China? The land lends itself to hide such a creature. There is food for it to survive. It does not need man. But it may have to die at the hands of man to prove to him that there is such a thing called Bigfoot. If we assume that Bigfoot is real and that men are closing in on this seemingly gentle monster, then we must prepare for that first meeting. To have eluded us for so long, Bigfoot must understand men very well. The burden will be on us to understand him. Bigfoot may well be waiting for some sign that we're ready.
Please join me on my new Patreon channel, Intuitive Insights in Tarot by Scott, where I will be using tarot cards to try to find the answers to the questions that I have posed in this video. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye. Hello, welcome to the very first edition of my new video series, In Search of Revisited. Today, we're in search of Bigfoot. So before I begin, and I want to tell you how I came about this idea of revisiting the old In Search of series. So those of you who are old enough to remember when this series came out, I was just 14 years old when the series came out, and I loved everything paranormal, UFOs, ghosts, life after death, all that kind of stuff. And at that time, there was very little video material that you could find to learn about it. There was no internet, no YouTube. And so when this show came out, I was fascinated. Every episode. There are things that I learned from that series that I still remember today that are pertinent to my philosophy. Now, sure, a lot of it's outdated, but still, it was groundbreaking material at the time. So I will be doing several videos based on episodes from that show. Okay, and today, the first one is Bigfoot. So I suggest you watch the episode in its entirety. Maybe you can skip around a couple of parts that are not pertinent anymore. But I put the questions in there that I want to look at now using my tarot cards. Okay, and so, oops, wow, my cards just exploded. The cards are really wanting to do this. They just came flying out. Okay, so that was interesting. Okay, so you see in that show, they start off with a scene of miners who are seem to be under attack by some kind of creature. You can see in the reenactment of that video that the men are terrified. There's something banging on the doors and overall just terrifying them. So my question is, what was the intentions of that creature? I mean, let's assume it was Bigfoot. Okay. And by the way, I'm not going to be asking if Bigfoot is real. I've done enough research on my own that I'm going on the assumption that this creature does exist. What its nature is, we're going to look at later on with the cards. But for this this event that you see playing out on the screen depicted here, I'm curious, what was that creature's intentions? Let's call him Sasquatch. Bigfoot's not a very polite name for this creature. So what was Bigfoot's intentions? What was he trying to do? Did he really want to get in there and like hurt these people, or was he maybe just trying to scare them away? Okay, now shuffle up the cards, and we're going to try to find out the events that are depicted on the screen here today. What was the creature's true intentions? Okay. I'm gonna flip the camera around here so you can see the cards as I pull them. Okay. What were the creature's intentions on that day that it seemingly attacked the miners, terrified them? Okay, so family. Bigfoot had a family nearby, and yes, it was definitely Sasquatch. Let's be respectful. Call him by his given name by the people who respected him most, the Indians. I'm laughing because I think this was a young Sasquatch, and this kind of surrender. It was a strategic. Okay, so he was a brash young Sasquatch, and he didn't like these miners encroaching on his land because his family lived there. And he just got this great idea. He's like, you know what? Mom and Dad told me not to mess with the humans, but I want them to surrender to our way of living. And this is our land. I want them out of here. So he came up with this plan. He devised this plan. He thought about it for a long time, and then he decided to put it into action. And he wanted them to go away because this was his land. That's the way he felt about it. This is his territory. And really, this was just like a scare tactic. So that's what I think here. Press it down. So I believe that's what happened in this incident with the miners in the beginning of the show, that this was a young Bigfoot who just wanted to scare these humans out of his land. So the next question I have in this video is, from where did they come, the Sasquatches? In this episode, they talk about Gigantopithecus, and that I have my notes over there. That's what I'm looking at. And the theory is Gigantopithecus is a primate like gorillas or chimpanzees that is yet to be discovered, and it migrated to the United States over the land bridge from Russia or Asia. And so actually, before I ask from where did they come, how about if we ask, is Sasquatch Gigantopithecus, as is seen in the fossils that they have of this creature, Gigantopithecus? Now, I don't buy macroevolution, that man evolved from primates. I think each individual species was created by our creator, and each is individual and does not morph from one to another. That's never been proven by science, by the way. Look it up. Okay, so first is, is Sasquatch actually Gigantopithecus as described by the fossil record that they have? The jawbone. I'm not sure how many other fossils they have of Gigantopithecus, but let's just see. If that's true, then the fossils they found of Gigantopithecus would be the only real solid evidence for Sasquatch, other than footprints. And I think they found some hairs. Okay, so Gigantopithecus, Sasquatch, are they one and the same? Let's see. Two times. So I just get the feeling that it's kind of a yes and no answer. There was an ancient version of Sasquatch that is known as Gigantopithecus, but there was a like it was given what do you call it was given higher consciousness, or like a soul. Like when it first was created, it was more of an animal, and then maybe its DNA or something was tampered with that gave it a soul, that gave it a higher consciousness, and that's what made it want to go into hiding from man, because both of these fives of swords over here, swords and wands, it didn't want to run into conflict with man. So I believe it started off as a creature, more with the intelligence of an ape or a chimpanzee. It wasn't it didn't have a greater consciousness, self-aware, like it didn't know. Like one of the things that distinguishes humans from other creatures is we know we're going to die someday. Most animals, except for maybe like elephants, don't have that understanding. But with this Wheel of Fortune in the background, it was turned on somehow. Okay, so that's a yes and a no, that the original Gigantopithecus was more of an animal, but the one that exists today has a greater consciousness. Okay, now the Sasquatch in North America, from where did it come? Did it travel over the ice bridge? What's that called? The Aleutian, the Bering Straits? Is it that same creature that they found fossils of in China? Is that how it came to the United States, or maybe it was always there? I say there because I'm not in America. Okay, let's take a look. From where did Sasquatch come? Now, I'm just talking about the Sasquatch in North America right now. Where did he come from? So there's truth to the story that it came from Asia. It's related to, okay, I think it was like maybe just some females left because they were being persecuted or something in Asia. Maybe they were being hunted, or there was for some reason there was a disappointment, and a group of females, mostly females with their children, left Asia looking for a place where they could be free, they could have justice. And this King of Pentacles always comes up as the United States for me, or in this case, North America. So, right, they got their family, they gathered up what family they could, the lovers here, And also, they loved this new country. When they came into North America, they just loved it, and they were able to flourish there. Oops, what happened to my? Okay, so I didn't have my overhead on, but I'll repeat what I just said. So yes, there's truth to the story that they came from Asia. I feel it was a family group, mostly females and their young, because they were being hunted or persecuted, or somehow there was something very disappointing about their life in Asia, and they were seeking justice. They were seeking a place where they could have freedom and start anew. Okay, so they left Asia, and the King of Pentacles, as I said before, comes up as the USA to me. When I see the King of Pentacles, I think of USA, or in this case, North America, because they wanted to bring their family someplace where they could be free and very prosperous too. This Six of Pentacles, they found that the land of North America was very generous to them, and they could thrive there. So this group of females took their young ones, and they were able to escape across the land bridge into North America. That's true. Okay, good. So Gigantopithecus, they came from Asia originally over the land. All right, so the next question I have is about this film. This is known as the Patterson Gimlin film. It has been analyzed since the time of this TV show, and it's been proven to be absolutely real. No man could even fit into this suit if it was a suit. They've been able to determine that by going back in and to the place where it was filmed and taking measurements and determining that it would be impossible to find a man who could even fit into the suit. Not only that, this is not a female at all. I'm sorry. This is not even a male. This is a female creature, because they were able to see that she had breasts. Okay. So my question is, why was she able to be filmed at all? Because in about 70 years since people have been hunting for Bigfoot, both with cameras and guns, nobody's been able to capture it except for this one film. So did she show herself on purpose? Who was she? Where was she going? What was she doing there that day? So I'm going to do a general look into this individual that we see on the screen here. Who was she? What was she doing? Okay. I want to change my background to okay. So get my overhead camera going again. So going to the question of who was the creature in the Patterson Gimlin film. I'm going to do a general look, see what the universe can tell us about that individual female. Double check that I am recording. Am I recording? I don't see it here. Yeah, recording. Recording in progress. Okay, good. Don't want to make that mistake again. Okay. So, who was the female in the Patterson Gimlin film? What was she doing that day? Was she just going to pick up some groceries? Going to look for the kids? What was she doing? Hmm. Interesting. Okay. So this is quite the story I'm getting here. So on that particular day, for some reason, she was very upset, and she had something else on her mind. And it's going to sound kind of crazy, but uh, it's like, okay, so the reason they caught her off guard that day was that she was out looking for the leader of their group. He hadn't been seen for a while. He was missing. This is the emperor. He was their leader, and for some reason, he he had caused some kind of strife in her. Maybe there was a bit of a row going on between her and him, and she had this on her mind, weighing heavily on her mind, and she was out looking for him. Yeah, with this Page of Wands, especially. He may have even been her husband. So she might have been like the empress of their troop. They were family, and he was out hiding from her. So it looks like we had a domestic dispute going on that day, and Mrs. Sasquatch was out looking for Mr. Sasquatch. Yeah, that's what I'm getting here. So wow. And because of that, she was like blinded. She was blinded by maybe her anger or whatever it was, her emotions, or not emotions, but her thoughts. She wasn't thinking straight because she was thinking about him. Where is he? She's out looking for him, and he was in hiding. That's why she got caught off guard that day. I bet that'll never happen again. Okay, so what's my next question? All right. So in the show, the In Search of show, one of the things I found very interesting was this group. I think they were miners again. It always seems like the miners who are coming across these guys. I can't remember exactly who they were, but they came across, or they say they caught one, and they named him Jacko. Okay, so evidently somehow they were able to apprehend one of the Sasquatch creatures, and they kept him captive, and they called him Jocko. Now that doesn't really ring true with me. I don't think this is a creature that could be caught by ordinary men. So my question is, what was Jocko? And the other thing is, what happened to him? Maybe we can get that in the same reading, because nobody knows what happened to Jocko after the time it was reported in the newspaper. Okay, so what was Jocko? It was just a wild man of some sort. Yeah, I want to say it was indeed a Sasquatch. And this particular Sasquatch, he had ambitions for, I think he wanted to reach out to people. I think he made a big mistake. He was going through some type of personal struggle, a change, and maybe he was warned by his people, the other Sasquatches, to stay away from people, but it was his great desire to interact with people, and even like he loved people, and he wanted to have a relationship with people, which of course ended badly for him. He ended up captured. And then what happened to him, right? Well, I think he was able to break free. I think he gained his freedom again, his sovereignty, his independence. I think his family came and got him out of there. So a group of Sasquatches came up with a plan to go and get him out of there. I don't know why this didn't get recorded. Maybe it was done so secretly, or they were able to, like, I think these creatures have like telepathic abilities. Maybe they were able to make everybody forget about that part of it. But the good news is that after being captured, that his family was able to rescue him and give him freedom again. So Jocko escaped the grasp of man, thank God. As I've mentioned before, people, such as the ones depicted here, have been hunting for Bigfoot with camera and guns for well over 50 years. And nobody has been able to shoot one or capture one on film other than the Patterson Gimlin film, which was just a happy accident because evidently she was out looking for her hubby that day, had a lot on her mind, and didn't take the necessary precautions to not be seen, which is very funny. So the question is, why haven't we been able to kill or capture one or get any more good video of Sasquatch? Do they have some type of like magical powers where they've never even found any bones or remnants? I do believe I saw where they found hair. I think they found hair, and they were able to even find that it was not of any creature that has ever been categorized before. And there's footprints. They have footprints, very convincing footprints. But other than those very few scraps of evidence, they've been able to hide themselves very well. So how is that? Why have we not seen one killed or captured, either physically or on film? So that is the question we have next. Switch my camera around so you can see me deal the cards. Let's give a good shuffle here. Got cards flying out. That's interesting. They put up a facade and they like to stay well hidden. They're hermit. They're very good at being hermits. Okay. So let's see what the rest of the cards have to tell us. Do they have like a telepathic or some kind of supernatural power? King of Wands. The Fool. Interesting. They're able to fool the people. People can see them. Okay, so let me read these cards the way I get this, okay? They are complete masters of their environment. They're able to manifest everything that they need to live. And with this King of Wands, they are in complete mastery of the environment in which they live, which is deep woods, remote wilderness places. And they're able to prevent people from seeing them by fooling them. You could be looking right at a Sasquatch, but what you would see is not a Sasquatch. You would see a tree or a rock or a waterfall or something like one of the elements, one of the four elements. They're able to completely transform them, not transform themselves physically, but transform what you see of them. These things, or I shouldn't say things, these creatures are very benevolent, and they're very authentic. They're very true to their own nature. I think with this 10 of Wands, we will never really see one. They will remain hidden, even I think after the Great Awakening. But secretly, behind the scenes, they are working with the Alliance, I think, with his lovers. They're part of a another type of truth movement, so to speak, but within creatures like themselves. Because I'm sure there are other mythical creatures such as fairies and gnomes, what have you, and they work together with those other creatures to keep themselves hidden. Let's see, will we ever see one? So it says here, I'm getting that it's something that their desire is to keep themselves hidden, but will there come a time maybe when the human race has reached a point of enlightenment? Hermit. So no, I really think that Sasquatch are going to remain hidden. Yep. So even after the Great Awakening, don't expect to ever see Sasquatch coming out and making relationships with human beings. They are fine to stay hidden in the background all by themselves. It's kind of sad. I would really like to be able to see these guys firsthand. Okay. So the next question I have on my list is I want to look at the nature of Bigfoot. I think I've already done that a little bit, but I have questions like how many are there in the Sasquatch community? Do they have a society, a structured society, a culture? What does their family unit look like? What do they eat? Actually, let's start with that first. Let's look at a Sasquatch family unit. Where do they live? What do they eat? What kind of hierarchy do they have? Do they have a government? Excuse me. Just generally like that. So, but first, family and community. What does that look like in the Sasquatch world? So I don't think they really have much of like a close family unit. It looks like from a very young age, the Sasquatch creatures go off on their own, and they live very independently. They love their freedom. They love being on their own. With this Nine of Pentacles, they're fiercely independent. They probably only come together occasionally to reproduce, and they're always on the move. They never stay in one place for long. I think they have small gatherings of 2 or 3 at a time where they share like resources. They share where's the best place to find food and shelter and things like that. But for the most part, Sasquatch live a very independent, not lonely, but isolated life. They don't have much of a family structure. If they do, it's only 2 or 3 or 4 individuals, and they leave that family at a young age, and they have to go out and find their own way in life. And they like isolation, as that hermit showed earlier. They like to stay alone for the most part, and hidden. Okay, and let's see what else. What do they eat? That's a question I have. Are they mostly herbivores, or do they eat meat? Those are the two main things. Or do they live off sunshine? That's a possibility as well. They don't even have to eat, that they live off energy directly from the ether. Maybe they're that highly evolved spiritually. Who's that King of Pentacles? Strength. Uh-huh. Interesting. Death in the background. Okay. Okay, so I think they are a top predator. I think they eat meat in a kind and loving way. They are able to overcome other creatures with their sheer strength. And they do this very solemnly. It's not something they enjoy. They don't enjoy killing. It can even make them sad, but they understand that this is the best nourishment for them. It looks like they're able to go long periods of time with no food at all, with this 9 of Cups. So like they can just, on one meal, I feel they can go on and on and on. And they're very careful about how they choose their prey. So I think they probably only find the old, weak animals that need to be culled, or it's a way of keeping the environment healthy. And they, in a very intellectual way, they decide which creatures they want to prey upon. But yeah, I'm going to say definitely they are meat eaters. They are not herbivores. Okay. Do I have any more questions here? All right. Towards the end of the episode, Leonard Nimoy talks about what does Sasquatch think of humans? I think I've already answered this question, part of it. He said, are they waiting for a sign that human race is ready to meet them? Well, I've already seen that they want nothing to do with us, either now or in the future. But for this video, I hope you've all enjoyed it. I hope it was worth the $2 or $3 or however much you pledged to see it in my Patreon channel. So, what does Sasquatch think of the human race? Let's see what the cards have to tell us. So, at one time, they were much like us, and they decided to take another path. They left the world of technology and comfort to go and live in the wilderness. That was the 5 of Pentacles. They want to stick to themselves and at all cost be their own individuals. However, they do see us as family, and they have a great deal of love for us, despite the fact that we're destroying their environment, hunting them, and so forth. It causes them a great bit of stress, even though they love us. They see the actions that the majority of the human race is taking, and they see that if there was no intervention, that this would be disastrous and take the human race into a dark place. So they do care about us. They see us as family, and they're hoping that we are able to put aside our lust for technology and wealth and follow them into a lifestyle of that is more in tune with nature. Become more empathic. They want the human race to be more empathic. Stop fighting amongst themselves and learn to love themselves. The human race needs to learn to love itself. And once again, tune in to the empathy that comes from a higher source, and leave the world of technology alone, or at least the type of technology that we're using now is not good for us. We need to get more in touch with nature and rediscover a type of natural technology that has been lost over the ages. That's their desire for us. Okay, and that's the end of my look into Sasquatch, aka Bigfoot. I hope you enjoyed my video. This is the very first of a whole series of In Search Ofs that I have coming up next. Sasquatch. My next video is going to be looking for Michael Rockefeller, who is thought to have, well, he went missing on an expedition into Papua New Guinea to live with these people, the Asmat headhunters. And there are stories that he was killed and eaten. Some people believe that he actually began living with them. We're going to look into that. And there's also the